Please take it. Anyway. And we have our speaker who has joined online, Dr. Fatoma Bamba, and she is a teacher, researcher and lecturer in Julius Nyerere University of Konkan, Guinea, from the West Africa, and she will join online tuitions and community stewardship are redefining ecological restoration, resource restoration, and how they are advancing ecological restoration. So this session is all about that, and we have very diverse experience from field, starting from the do. Is it that the governance stops? How does that work? So I'm essentially here to not explore what material benefits are gained out of whatever it is that the communities do, but essentially see how is it that the communities are able to govern these commons in the absence of formal recognition of their rights and tenure security in the space. So essentially here I'm sort of interested in the in-between space where between law and practice, how do communities enact governance while we see the formal devolution of power is something that still lags behind. So where it began was essentially in the context where, so our exploratory study where it began was essentially the context where we saw widespread invasion of this species called Lantana camara, and what was essentially happening was that this had all kinds of effect, but usually the more pronounced effect or the more talked about effects were ecological. We started digging a little deeper, and what we saw was the approach to deal with it was highly technical. To uproot it, to have workers come in, uproot the plant for one season, and then do the entire drive again and again. And essentially and that is seen in vacuum to what's happening in the villages and in the communities around. This operation also becomes essential for the management of grasslands in the tiger reserves and other areas as well. So here I'm essentially looking not inside those reserved areas, but in the space where communities also access these forests. So in this, what is striking is that your communities themselves went on to recognize this not just as an ecological problem, but something that was an institutional, that had an institutional angle to it as well. There was a governance lapse, or there was some gap in the history that was observed, that in the mind of the community was the phase where the spread of lantana was also sort of had also increased. So here I'm essentially looking at the central question then is that how do communities in the forest fringe villages of Madhya Pradesh govern these degraded commons when their rights, their tenure security is not recognized. So the idea is that governance doesn't necessarily vanish even if their tenure security is not formally recognized. So what happens is that it is negotiated, it is then reconstituted in these spaces, and often the tool for that, or the way in which it unfolds, is what Cleaver calls institutional bricolage, where a lot of informal ways of governance with the formal set or the inkling of what formal systems could look like, the assimilation of that then comes up as something that legitimizes the community. So unko ye sari when they sort of bring these aspects together, they sort of are able to negotiate better. Whatever efforts they are making is essentially recognized better, and various centers of power then listen to their voices and then respond to it in a better fashion. For that, they have to negotiate on an everyday basis almost. So, what am I, in terms of the conceptual framework, what I'm essentially looking at is Ostrom's work wherein she says that, okay, institutions, community institutions are capable of governing their commons, and while doing that, they craft their own rules, regulations. And through those, they're able to manage and they're much capable of managing their resources. They go on to do so again and again. There's another school of scholarship that has emerged that basically says that, okay, these are not necessarily legal bindings that come up. A lot of these are also legitimized and in how they are able to negotiate things in the social spaces. So in this context, without formal tenure security also, legitimacy and not essentially legality, so the formal devolution, etc., comes into play and enables collective action and then compliance to those essentially formed rules, the designs that have come up. Then we look at the decentralization aspect. So what we are looking at is that in India, we have a 73rd Amendment, we have PESA, which essentially, what does that mean? This was PESA area where the study was, or where the insights are drawn from. So what is essentially meant is that the community institution or the Gram Sabha rather has the power to govern the natural resources of the place. Now, there's also Forest Rights Act. What that does is that recognizes the historical right of the community, and amongst the many bundles of rights, there is also recognition of the right of community to be able to manage these forests as commons. Now, in Madhya Pradesh, while the study was being conducted, what was happening was that in a lot of these places, the PESA rule was not notified fully yet. What that meant was that although there's an inkling of, okay, fifth schedule, it's a fifth schedule area, so essentially means that the Gram Sabhas have the right, but how do they formally access it? How do they formally express it? Or what's the authority? That's something which is still a little dicey. And in that, if we go on, the FRA claims, the community forest rights claims were made, but those claims were not essentially recognized. So, this is the situation of administrative ambiguity, where the institutions, although there's some sort of recognition that they do hold power and right, but essentially how do they express this, exercise it, is something which is unclear across. When we talk about these resources, then there's multiple centers of power. Now, some authority exists with the department, some with the Panchayati Raj institutions. Then there are NGOs are also one of the important actors in these spaces that have emerged in the politics of all of this. And then there's community institution, and none of these institutions are singular, all-encompassing authorities of governance. So, or decision making essentially. So, in practice, what we see is that these are very unequal, negotiated governance practices, and that these require coordination, continuous coordination from the community, from amongst state agencies, NGOs, all of them coming together. So, this is essentially the lens that I'm using to look at this, the entire case, wherein, so there's the constitutional legitimacy of these Gram Sabha, although it's acknowledged in principle, it's not essentially supported by the state, there's not formal ways to be able to exercise it. Rules and regulations, resolutions in these circumstances, whenever made, is then it's socially and morally legitimate, but doesn't have formal legal binding as such. And then communities operate in what I like to call a governance grey zone then. So it's a very ambiguous space where they have to navigate. So it's a qualitative interpretive study here, and it was done, so the observations come from 6 of the forest fringe villages of 2 of the districts in Madhya Pradesh. And these were also sites of long-term facilitation by Foundation for Ecological Security. I was a part of the research team then. I also have another team, the research team member from them, Chetan Sahai. So, so essentially we were back then looking at lantana, but this is also one aspect that had come up very strongly. These villages captured in this particular paper are essentially positive deviants. So they are already communities or the community mobilization around deviated commons is pretty strong over there. So that's another thing that I would like to flag. There was tools of semi-structured interviews, FGDs, document reviews, etc. That was done. So ultimately, it is the study of governance as is practiced. It's a set of social performance, basically, through which the community sustain authority and collective action in the absence of formal terminology. So, what are the findings? What we see is that there's a history. When we talk about invasion of these commons by Lantana, Kamara, what is essentially seen is that it was historically it has been seen as ecological problem. But by talking to the communities, what came up was that there was this history of communities managing, having a very robust system with essentially systems for monitoring. There was labor distribution around it, and all these systems were in place. But back in the 90s, with forest departments' encroachment of their access to the forest, what ended up happening was that a lot of their practices that was put in place around how do they manage their grasslands, or the pasture lands essentially, and or sites of plantation. Those governance practices started loosening with the grip of forest department tightening. In the memory of the community is also that this is the time when the spread of Lantana Kamara then also sort of expanded much more. So this angle, along with the very nicely delineated institutional erosion aspect that they were discussing, gave this a different angle. So it essentially now doesn't really just remain an ecological issue. After the recognition of this as something which was this as institutional or governance gap when it was recognized, we saw strong mobilization of Gram Sabhas and Gram Sabha committees around the issue of degradation and the issue of restoration. What then happened was also bylaws formation, wherein villages then create rules around how labor would be shared for to actually work on those commons. What would the sanctions be to if there's somebody who sort of doesn't abide by the bylaws that are formed? Who uses it? How are these sites monitored then? Essentially, this is amalgamation of formal ways of forming laws, probably sometimes also putting it to writing. And what gives it legitimacy then is that these bylaws, although they do not have any formal legal binding, because they are discussed over there, endorsed by all the community members, these are also enforced because of the social legitimacy that they get over there. And through this practice, they are also able to then have an influence with the other actors that they negotiate. The other bit then is also about how a lot of these practices are around the restoration activities were primarily community institution driven. So there was a lot of labor share around various activities. I wouldn't go into a lot of activities that were done and all of that, but it was there was labor sharing and different roles of different set of people were decided, and the degree to which varied from one village to the other. It wasn't essentially one blanket thing that happened in all these 6 villages. So there was variability there as well. Uh, these responsibilities then included mobilizing participation for a lot of these restoration work, organizing work, shifts, timings, monitoring these areas, all of that. And then women also had distinctive role, not exclusive for all these six locations, but it came out strongly for a lot of these sites. Was they often manage the routine oversight, so tracking who's coming, who's not coming. So do they need to be sanctioned? Could there be any other way to sort of engage them further and have better participation? How do people comply by these rules and regulations? And then it's the social legitimacy of these bylaws that sort of drives the entire thing. In all of this, what is also essential to flag is that there's a complementary role that even the civil society organization plays. So here there's they prove to be the element for technical, the source for technical guidance. They provide tools for negotiation, probably often also playing a major role in coordination amongst actors. Also helping the communities in being able to access funds which are otherwise not essentially accessible to the community institutions as such, and funds are essential for driving these restoration related changes. So the third bit is about how there is overlapping mandate across various departments, various actors over here, or rather various centers of power that we see. So Panchayat has its own mandate. Narega would essentially cover implementation of Narega would mean what kind of labor availability exists for the restoration work. Gram Sabha, these various community institutions, local institutions that are there, NGOs who are quite very involved in facilitation and logistic support provision. And none of these institutions essentially have the full authority as such. Now, what we see is communities also very strategically then navigate through these spaces. So they'll selectively engage with actors when required and also selectively bypass the rules when that becomes essential for the governance. So essentially forest guard would be invited to the meetings to ensure that what we are doing is essentially we are maintaining a sense of transparency, everybody knows what's happening. But that's not necessarily for approval always, and or rather it's not for approval. Panchayats fund are leveraged, and the plans are then aligned to how the panchayat would more readily accept those plans, and then those funds are also accessible then. And then if there are need of NGOs participation in proper coordination in mobilizing funds, so then that becomes one of the actors to engage with. And it is through this negotiation and such relationships that this authority, although it's not formally institutionalized, but this authority is then asserted over the governance of degraded commons. So in practice, what it essentially means is that there's multiple centers of institution that are there, and what community does it adapts to the situation and then sort of navigates through these. And it's shaped by the context. It's not a blanket thing that happens everywhere. Yes. So the communities then operate from in these spaces, and then the legitimacy is then rather relational, and it's not it's built through performance, credibility, and openness. So here, alright, so a lot of this I've already talked about. So policy, so in this discussion what we see is that it's rather the procedural legitimacy that is asserted, and that proves to be the basis for assertion of their authority. There's institutional bracketage, there's formal and there's this convergence of formal ways of operating and informal ways of operating that comes together in the governance of these commons, and these are rather performed and negotiated every day it could change. It's because um, it's not legally recognized or formalized yet. It could the dynamics could change anyway. So there's that aspect also. Essentially, if you look at what does it mean, policy, what are the policy implications that it has? So these community crafted rules and regulations often, or rather need to be treated as legitimate instruments of governance. They are the ones closest to the ground forming rules, and its recognition is required. Now,
Please.
a lot of these funds for governance and restoration work should be routed through these community institutions and Gram Sabha in this particular case. And there needs to be a structured engagement of these multiple actors that exist for the degradation, for the restoration work to essentially operate in a best fashion. A lot of such models have come up. We see WRI working in the space, Pradhan, this term of multi-actor platform that we hear again and again. But essentially, this is one such case where we saw that these multiple actors coming into places essentially, even when there's no formal recognition of I'll conclude with this. Thank you.
So thank you so much, Sevangi. So it was excellent presentation. So just to sum up her sharing. So when we can take it. So when we are talking about commons governance, resource governance, so the first thing come in mind is tenure security is important. But her story highlights in absence of tenure, how one can negotiate resource governance. And this is a type of institutional innovations. In absence of tenure also, community can come up with their norms, their bylaws to govern their resources. It may not be legally legitimized, but socially legitimized. So this comes to as a innovations piece of negotiating community governance in.
There are a mixed setup there. Informal and formal rules exist. So informal rules, as Soni also told, it is closely linked to the cultural value of the common. So there are one example, if you can see, is if somebody cuts the tree for construction or other thing, they had to keep that tree in the temple of the Jasnabji. Second is verbal penalties being imposed. Third is when the study was going on, new Charaka Vikas Samiti was set up, but it was just set up so they were unable to exercise the governance around the orals. And the panchayat's role also in the governance was weak. So it was more of informal rules going on in the governance. So taking it to the challenge, you can see the challenges as the formal institutions were weak, panchayat was weak, CBS was weak in governing the commons, and lot of trees were cut for construction of houses, and there was visible encroachment by the upper caste community. And the rules, informal rules existed, but the pattern which was coming was, in the past the rules were strictly exercised, but now the application of the rules is weakening.
So we will conclude by saying that Poland has a significant social and economic and ecological value in Rajasthan. It plays a very important role in the lives of people, and till now I think it has been protected due to their strong cultural belief that people carry in themselves, and also that over the time the ecological conditions are weakening, since because the conventional rule or the community caring rule, that is very informal. It does not have a formal rule, because there is no sense of ownership, as Hardin
rightly said that if there is no sense of ownership in the community, the tragedy of commons is supposed to occur, or it occurs. So there is no demarcation of the land and the community rights, but as much in the government land record, it is mentioned around 3,000 biga of land, but in reality on the ground, the land is not demarcated. So this is one of the challenge about the ownership. Also, talking about the knowledge and agency of the local stakeholders, it is also weak because since there is no ownership, so people are always seeking for their own private benefit, and it always come at the cost of overuse. So if the community is overusing, obviously they are gaining personally, but the community is suffering due to overuse. And so there is need for a strong village institution. Only traditional rules and belief system will not sustain for its prosperity. So that's it.
Thank you, Soumya and Swati. So looking at time, I am not taking much time in the consultation because we have two presentations. So in short, you have shared about one thing, you have connected your organs, the sacred land to the ecosystem services that you have shared, and also linking it to the stewardship framework of care, knowledge and agencies. And also while summing up, you are also sharing that how the knowledge component is deteriorating, and also agency is also getting weaker. So these are the things in summary. So without taking much time, I am inviting the next presenter, Niranjan Mishra from Ladakh, and he will share about community forest rights and community forest governance to manage their resources.
Click on allow.
Thank you, Sheila. And I think my voice is audible to the last row.
Left hand side.
Left side.
सुनाई देगा?
There's a pop-up.
ठीक है.
Left hand side. पे.
Okay, sorry. Yeah, that's why I was like, why is it?
Keep the first one.
Okay.
Thank you. तो मेरे पहले दो प्रेजेंटेशन हो चुका है. तो मैं ये बोलना चाहता हूँ कि let me take you to the village. ठीक है? So I will share a story of a village that is Nanthapamsuka. It is inside the forest in Odisha, Kandhamal district. When we ये जो गांव है ये जंगल से चारों तरफ से घिरा हुआ है. अब नो ऑल वेदर रोड नहीं मिला, लोग रहते हैं वहाँ. But when we enter to the village in around 2010, प्रथम फर्स्ट मिनिस्टर go to the village and वहाँ पे हमने शुरू किया पहला काम. जब वहाँ पे DBI मतलब पहाड़ के ऊपर एक झरना था और वहाँ का पानी को डायरेक्ट डाइवर्सन पे इरिगेशन से नीचे लाना. That is the case first we have initiated and successfully done that, and they have a नल, घर के अंदर नल, and that is जब वहाँ पे इलेक्ट्रिसिटी भी नहीं गया था. So अगर हम So this is the time trend. जब हम उस गांव में गए थे, तो in 2011 में सेल्फ हेल्प ग्रुप का मुहिम चल रहा था. सेल्फ हेल्प ग्रुप में हम लोग गए. Then in 2011 to 2019 school established and electricity come to the village. लेकिन इलेक्ट्रिसिटी आने से पहले उस गांव में घर के अंदर नल में जला था. So उसको मैनेज करना वो जो पहाड़ के अंदर जो पहाड़ के ऊपर जो है पानी का टैंक बना के उस पानी को नीचे लाना और उस पानी का टैंक को जाते जाते रोज साफ सुथरा करते रहना, ये एक प्रोसेस था कम्युनिटी स्टूवर्डशिप का। हाउ टू मैनेज दैट वाटर एंड हाउ टू टेक इट टू द विलेज एंड टू ईच हाउस। ये सब जब शुरू हुआ बाद में हमको और रियलाइज है कि व्हाट आर द डिफरेंट काइंड्स ऑफ टूल्स, व्हाट आर द डिफरेंट काइंड्स ऑफ रूल्स, एक्ट्स आर देयर इन द गवर्नमेंट जो हमको इसको सपोर्ट कर सकते हैं। देन वी फाउंड देयर आर फॉरेस्ट राइट एक्ट इज देयर। एट द सेम टाइम कुछ दिन पहले धरती आवा जनजातीय ग्राम उत्कर्ष अभियान, लेकिन उससे पहले भी अगर हम देखेंगे तो सीएफआर मैनेजमेंट का गाइडलाइन भी आया था। गवर्नमेंट हैव सीएफआर मैनेजमेंट गाइडलाइन, गवर्नमेंट हैव फॉरेस्ट राइट एक्ट, वो सारा चीजें हैं, पर मोस्ट ऑफ द एनजीओस एंड मोस्ट ऑफ द पार्टनर्स हम लोग जब काम करते हैं तो जब तक राइट्स तक जाके वहां पे सीमित हो जाते हैं। पर सेक्शन 31I, सेक्शन 41E, सेक्शन 5 ऑफ द फॉरेस्ट राइट एक्ट, ये सब जिम्मेदारियां देता रहता है कम्युनिटी को। दिस ऑल आर इंस्टीट्यूशनलाइज्ड थिंग्स, बट हाउ टू इसको ग्राउंड करना है, ये स्टोरी उसके बारे में है। सो जब इस तरह का अपॉर्चुनिटीज एंड एनेबलिंग एक्ट्स एंड प्रोग्राम्स हुई है तो उसमें फिर हम लोगों ने एक प्रोसेस वहां पे इनिशिएट करने का कोशिश किया, जिसको मैं यहाँ पे समराइज करूंगा। दिस इज द प्रोसेस दैट वी हैव अडॉप्टेड। तो अवेयरनेस क्रिएशन की बहुत जरूरत है। इस अवेयरनेस क्रिएशन में हम लोगों ने एंट्री टू द विलेज तो 2010 से हो गया था, लेकिन उसके बाद ये कम्युनिटी का मीटिंग्स करना, उसमें फॉर्मेशन ऑफ कम्युनिटी रिसोर्स मैनेजमेंट कमिटी, मोस्ट ऑफ द इंपोर्टेंट इंस्टीट्यूशनल अरेंजमेंट इन द विलेज where we can acknowledge the stewardship and उसको फिर expand कर सकते हैं in the village, then in the panchayat, then in the district, and through that we also influence the administration to expand this kind of processes। तो जब ये हुआ, बाकी भी आपने दिखाया, अभी मेरे पहले प्रेजेंटेशन में भी दिखा कि वो एक सोशल मैप बना है, रिसोर्स मैप बनाते हैं, देन बाकी सारे जितने भी मैपिंग करते हैं एनटीएपी का वो सब होता है, सीजनलिटी मैपिंग करते हैं, एंड दैट इज आवर पार्टिसिपेटरी रूरल अप्रेजल, तो जिसमें हम लोगों ने वो काम गांव में की। ये गांव में काम करते करते, बिकॉज वी आर आउटसाइडर, सो वी डोंट नो मोस्ट ऑफ द थिंग्स अबाउट द विलेज, सो कम्युनिटी का जो एंगेजमेंट वो चाहिए, उसी से हम लोगों ने ये शुरू किया प्रोसेस। देन व्हाट इज द फॉरेस्ट रेंजर? अब ये जो काम हम लोगों ने दिखाया सही में दिख रहा है जंगल में, सही में आपके गांव में है, देन वी हैव इनिशिएटेड द फॉरेस्ट वर्क। तो वहां पे ट्रांजिट वर्क तो डिफरेंट साइड में करते हैं, बट ये फॉरेस्ट वर्क हुआ। लेकिन फॉरेस्ट वर्क होने के समय पे हमको ये लगा कि खाली प्रेजेंट करंट सिचुएशन का फॉरेस्ट वर्क करने से होगा क्या? वी नीड हिस्टोरिक वर्क ऑफ द फॉरेस्ट। सो 3 सेट्स ऑफ पीपल को हम लोगों ने बैठाए, 2000 more than 50 years of age, and those are between 50 to 35 and 25 से नीचे, and all 3 sets of people have different perspective about their village। पहले वाले जो 50 साल से ज्यादा है वो लोग बोले जंगल तो घर के पास से था, जानवर यहाँ तक आते थे, these are the livelihoods opportunity, no networks। और 25 से नीचे वाले बोले स्कूल था गाँव में, जंगल वहां से शुरू होता है। तो all these are different एस्पेक्ट जब आया, उसको जब हम लोगों ने मिलाया और गांव वालों के सामने प्रेजेंट किया, दिस इज द सिचुएशन बिफोर 30 इयर्स, दिस इज द सिचुएशन बिफोर 20 इयर्स, 15 इयर्स, एंड दिस इज द सिचुएशन बिफोर 10 इयर्स। व्हाट आर द सिनेरियो? फॉरेस्ट इज डिग्रेडिंग, और व्हाट काइंड ऑफ न्यू स्पीसीज और न्यू एग्रीकल्चर, बहुत सारा एनजीओ का भी होता है, बहुत सारा लोग उसमें प्रवेश करते हैं, डिफरेंट टेक्निक्स आता है, तो क्या हुआ है जिनके साथ? ये सब जब हम लोगों ने बातचीत किया, ये बातचीत करने के बाद एक डेवलपमेंट ऑफ कम्युनिटी फॉरेस्ट, अब इसको देखते हुए जो ट्रेडिशनल नॉलेज है, अपना सैक्रेड ग्रुप्स को कैसे वो लोग बचाते हैं, डिफरेंट फूड्स को कैसे वो लोग आज वो मिल रहा है या नहीं मिल रहा है, तो वो गया तो कहाँ चला गया, उसको रिस्टोर करना चाहिए क्या? ये ट्रांजेक्ट वर्क, एक तो फॉरेस्ट ट्रांजेक्ट वर्क, फिर फॉरेस्ट हिस्ट्री का ट्रांजेक्ट वर्क से एक जुड़ाव बैठा कि इसको तो रिस्टोर करने की जरूरत है, हम लोग करते हैं, हमारे पास सीड्स है, हम लोग इसको नजरअंदाज कर दिए हैं, ये सारा चीजें सामने आई, लेकिन करेंगे कहाँ पे? देन इट्स कम्स अबाउट द फॉरेस्ट राइट एक्ट, उसमें तो हमारा सीआरआर एरिया आना चाहिए। तो इस बीच में जब ये प्रोसेस हम लोगों ने आगे बढ़ाया तो यहाँ पे एक कम्युनिटी के साथ एक आता है कि कुछ चेंज एजेंट्स की जरूरत होता है, जहाँ पे टेक्निकली जगह को मैप करना, लैंड को मैप करना, कितना एरिया है निकालना, इसका फिर एक उसमें इंट्रोड्यूस हुआ। और इसको करते करते गांव वालों ने अपने ही खुद का मोबाइल डिवाइस से जो मैप तैयार किए, डाउनलोड नहीं हुआ था, मैप था दूसरा था, थोड़ा मैनेज कर दीजिए इसको। ठीक है, तो लेट मी ठीक है, नहीं तो वो प्रेजेंटेशन चला दे टाइम नहीं। हाँ ठीक है रहने दीजिए, छोड़िए। तो जब ये चला तो फिर कम्युनिटी खुद में आपकी अपने गांव को, बिकॉज आज ये आउटसाइडर विल डोंट नो व्हाट इज द ट्रेडिशनल बाउंड्री ऑफ दैट विलेज, बट कम्युनिटी में आपकी एंड द एंथुसियाज्म कि अच्छा इसको करने से क्या होगा, इसको करने से होगा कि इसको हम थोड़ा सा फॉरेस्ट डिपार्टमेंट के साथ, रेवेन्यू डिपार्टमेंट के साथ शेयर करेंगे एंड फॉरेस्ट डिपार्टमेंट और रेवेन्यू डिपार्टमेंट के साथ शेयर करेंगे और ये एरिया में हम लोग कर सकते हैं अपना मैनेजमेंट का प्लान बना सकते हैं। देन धीरे धीरे जब ये आगे आया, देन जब ये मैप बना, सो दिस इज ए काइंड ऑफ सिनेरियो डेवलप हुआ कि दिस इज द रेवेन्यू बाउंड्री, हमारा ट्रेडिशनल बाउंड्री तो यहाँ तक जाता था। देन और ये करते करते 2023 में इनको फॉरेस्ट राइट एक्ट का टाइटल मिला। और फिर इस जगह को उन लोगों ने इतना सारा पैचेस में डिवाइड किया, क्योंकि कम्युनिटी का जो रिस्टोरेशन होता है वो लोग हर एक पैच के लिए अलग अलग तरीके से उसको सोचते हैं। कहीं पे सेक्रेट ग्रुप्स है, कहीं पे एनटीएपी का अवेलेबिलिटी बहुत ज्यादा है, कहीं पे एनिमल्स जो है वो दिख रहे हैं तो वहां पे उसको रिस्टोर करते हैं। तो देयर आर डिफरेंट, कहीं पे हम लोग वाटर का कंजर्वेशन का काम कर सकते हैं, कहीं पे हम लैंड का ट्रीटमेंट का काम कर सकते हैं। दीज आर द काइंड ऑफ पैचेस दे हैव डेवलप्ड एंड इसको डिजिटली किया गया। सो देयर इज अ नीड ऑफ बोथ डिजिटाइजेशंस और ये जो इमोशनल अटैचमेंट्स विद देयर फॉरेस्ट, ये दोनों का जरूरत होगा, ये मिलेगा तभी होगा एंड दैट विल हेल्प की कम्युनिटी फॉरेस्ट रिसोर्स मैनेजमेंट कमिटी इज द इंपॉर्टेंट इंस्टीट्यूशन। और ये सेक्शन 4(1)(e) में फॉरेस्ट राइट एक्ट में बना, इसके लिए कोई हमको कोई बनाना नहीं पड़ेगा, कोई रजिस्ट्रेशन प्रोसेस में नहीं जाना है, इट्स ऑलरेडी अवेलेबल। सो दैट इज अ बिगेस्ट इंस्टीट्यूशन एंड दैट कैन इन्फ्लुएंस आल्सो द ग्रांट्स। तो ये प्लान के अनुसार जब गांव में गए और हर एक प्लान के अनुसार फिर ये प्लान जब बन जाता है तो इसमें एक बहुत बड़ा चीज का जरूरत होता है जो मैं प्रोसेस में यहाँ पे बोलना चाहता हूँ कि फोकस ट्रेनिंग, कम्युनिटी रिसोर्स मैनेजमेंट के साथ कुछ ट्रेनिंग की जरूरत होता है, उसको हम लोगों ने बातचीत किया। ट्रेनिंग इज नॉट अबाउट द एक्चुअली द रिस्टोरेशन अबाउट वर्क, ट्रेनिंग इज अबाउट हाउ टू मेंटेन द इंस्टीट्यूशंस। कितने महीने में बैठना होगा, कितने 15 दिन में बैठना होगा, क्योंकि हर एक इंस्टीट्यूशन का ना अपना एक साइकिल होता है, उसी साइकिल के अंदर अगर नहीं बैठेंगे तो वो नहीं होगा। सेल्फ हेल्प ग्रुप 7 दिन में बैठना पड़ेगा, नहीं तो टूट जाता है। मैक्सिमम 15 दिन में बैठना ही चाहिए, नहीं तो नहीं होगा वो शेयरिंग। तो कम्युनिटी फॉरेस्ट रिसोर्स मैनेजमेंट कमेटी एटलीस्ट महीने में एक बार बैठना चाहिए, नहीं तो नहीं होगा। हर महीने चेक करना पड़ेगा कि हमने जो काम दिया था वो किया था। Then need to development of the decision support system. डिसीजन तो हम लोग ले लिया, ये सब करना है, लेकिन अब इसको सपोर्ट कौन करेगा? ग्राम सभा करेगा। So that plan need to be submitted in the ग्राम सभा. That plan should be submitted in the respective departments कि हम लोग ये करना चाहते हैं, and that plan should be come in the department's plan. तब ये convergence बनेगा। पैरेलली दोनों चलेंगे तो कितना दिन चलेंगे दो इंस्टीट्यूशंस? हम फॉरेस्ट डिपार्टमेंट को घुसने नहीं देगा, फॉरेस्ट डिपार्टमेंट गांव वालों को घुसने नहीं देगा, ये तो कभी नेवर एंडिंग प्रोसेस है। कब होगा? जब कन्वर्ज होंगे। कन्वर्ज होने के लिए दोनों को मिलने की जरूरत है, तो इसका शुद्ध प्लान सबमिट होना पड़ेगा। सो इस तरह का एक डिसीजन का सपोर्ट सिस्टम तैयार करना है थ्रू कम्युनिटी। कम्युनिटी वाले जाएंगे, कम्युनिटी वाले खुद देंगे, कुछ होगा डिस्कशंस, तब ये प्रोसेस इनिशिएट होगा कि कैसे हो सकता है। देन द प्लान का सामने रहेगा तो प्लान उसके ऊपर काम करेंगे। साइकिल चलाना है और आगे नहीं देखेंगे, नीचे ही देखेंगे तो आगे तो नहीं बढ़ पाएंगे। तो दैट्स व्हाई द प्लान इन द, तो ये प्रोसेस हम लोगों ने वहां पे इनिशिएट किया। सो ये होने से कम्युनिटी ने जब एक सब काम हम लोगों ने शुरू किया, वहां पे बातचीत किए, तो कोलैबोरेशन हुआ, तो वहाँ पे कुछ लैंड यूज पैटर्न बने एंड व्हाट एक्शन टेकन बाय द कम्युनिटी। कुछ काम तो कम्युनिटी खुद ही करते हैं और करते आ रहे हैं। जब उनको पता चला तो ये जंगल में पिछले 3 साल से आग नहीं लगा। तो जब भी गांव में फॉरेस्ट डिपार्टमेंट को फोन होगा, वो आएंगे, उसको बुझाएंगे, तब तक तो आधा जंगल जल जाता है रात को तो अंधेरे में। बट फॉरेस्ट डिपार्टमेंट उनको ट्रेनिंग दिया कि रात को कैसे जंगल में जाना है, किस किस ये कोलैबोरेटिव इफर्ट से ये गांव ने ये अचीव किया कि 3 साल तक जंगल में आग नहीं लगा। तो ऐसा नहीं है कि ये लोग नहीं करते थे, पर उनका अपना एक स्टाइल था, फॉरेस्ट डिपार्टमेंट का अपना स्टाइल है, दोनों मिले एक पावरफुल सिचुएशन डेवलप हुआ और ये गांव में जंगल नहीं है, आग नहीं लगा। इसके बाद आगे अगर देखेंगे तो फिर कम्युनिटी आगे बढ़ता है और दूसरा रिस्टोरेशन ऑफ जो फूड्स था, दूसरे प्लांट्स थे जो खत्म हो गए हैं, कट के ड्यू टू एग्रीकल्चर तो बहुत सारा लैंड साफ हो गया था, एग्रीकल्चर करेंगे वो सब चीज करेंगे तो उसको रिस्टोर किया थ्रू सीड बॉल एक्टिविटी। इस गांव ने रिस्टोर किया डिफरेंट काइंड्स ऑफ सीड्स जो गांव में जंगल में खत्म हो गए थे, नेटिव स्पेसीज है, कोई बाहर का स्पेसीज नहीं, नेटिव स्पेसीज को उन लोगों ने कलेक्ट किया। लगा 6 महीने का समय, क्या क्या रख सकते हैं, सियाली लीफ प्लेट बनाएंगे, आमला है गांव में और वो करंज का पेड़ है उसको लगाएंगे, इस तरह की चीजें उन्होंने निकाला और सीड्स को उन लोगों ने फिर आगे प्रोपागेट किया थ्रू सीड बॉल। सो देयर इज आल्सो एनर्जी। जब सीड बॉल आता है तो गांव के सारे लोग बैठते हैं, सब लोग बनाते हैं, ये मेरा है, ये मेरा है, उसको सुखाते हैं, कितना जर्मिनेशन परसेंटेज है उसके ऊपर अभी बातचीत करना शुरू हो गया है, जितना बनाया उतना उगा क्या, उसके लिए क्या नॉर्म सेटिंग होगा, नए नए पेड़ उगेंगे तो वहाँ पे ग्रेजिंग हो जाएगा तो क्या होगा। दीज आर द थिंग्स दैट द CFR मैनेजमेंट कमिटी इज डिस्कसिंग इन ईच मीटिंग, इन मंथली मीटिंग्स। सो कंट्रोल ग्रेजिंग करना, देन दीज आर द INRM प्लान उन लोगों ने किया, देन दिस इज व्हाट व्हेन वी सबमिट द प्लान इन द पंचायत, देन पंचायत सपोर्ट इन दिस काइंड ऑफ वर्क, जिसमें गांव वालों ने काम किया, अपने गांव में काम किया, NREGS से अपने जेब में भी पैसा लिए और जो रिस्टोरेशन हुआ उससे इकोलॉजिकल रिस्टोरेशन भी वहाँ पे हुआ। तो एक छोटा सा फोटोग्राफ था 2003 में, यहाँ पे देखिए ये फोटोग्राफ से सेम इस प्लेस का फोटोग्राफ है, लेकिन यहाँ पे इन लोगों ने टेंस पड़ा था, बाद में वहाँ पे सारा फॉरेस्ट थोड़ा डेवलप हुआ है। फॉरेस्ट ये थिंग जो हम 1-2 साल में तो देख नहीं पाएंगे, इट्स नीड्स सम काइंड ऑफ मोर टाइम, जहाँ पे हम लोग और ज़्यादा चेंजेस थे। So this is what then it will happen, then ये सारा चीजें हुआ कि लैंड बॉन्डिंग जो फॉरेस्ट राइट एक्ट IFR में मिला था वो होना शुरू हुआ, डिफरेंट डिपार्टमेंट सपोर्ट किए, ब्लैक पेपर का प्लांट ITDA से सपोर्ट मिला, जो टर्मरिक का खेती कंधमाल में बहुत ज्यादा होता है, इट्स आल्सो GI टैग वो उसको करेंगे तो उसका एरिया बढ़ा, वो नेचुरली ग्रो होता है, उसमें कोई केमिकल पेस्टिसाइड्स का लोग यूज नहीं करते हैं, वो फिर वहाँ पे एक लाइवलीहुड का अपॉर्चुनिटी वहाँ पे डेवलप हुआ। और देन और इस इम्पैक्ट, ये तो इकोसिस्टम सर्विस के बारे में तो हम बात नहीं करते हैं बहुत सारा, पर इसमें इकोसिस्टम सर्विस, साफ पानी, साफ हवा, जंगल में कुछ जानवर अभी आए हैं, मोर, जैकल, इस तरह का जानवर बढ़े हैं गांव में, इस तरह का एक चीज यहाँ पे डेवलप करना। आगे चल के इम्पैक्ट ऑफ इंटरवेंशन सब देखेंगे तो आई हैव सम कॉपीज इस PPT का मेरे पास है, मैं आप सभी को दे दूंगा। तो इस तरीके से हम जब आगे बढ़े, इट इज वाइड, ये असल तो ये फोटोग्राफ हम देख सकते हैं, इसका आपका यहाँ पे है, तो अगर हम देखेंगे तो एक ये जो फोटोग्राफ है यहाँ पे देखेंगे तो जंगल का सिचुएशन जो है बहुत कम हुआ था 1995 के टाइम में, ये 2020 का है और ये आपका 2025 का है, जिसमें अगर हम देखेंगे तो एक कम्युनिटी स्टीवर्डशिप से जो डिग्रेडेड फॉरेस्ट था वो धीरे धीरे बढ़ा हुआ है। So these are the things. So they, in the conclusion, the efforts over the last 3 years have begun to show promising results. ये तो दिख रहा है। With deforestation not only halted but also reversed through the serious intervention, witnessing these positive changes in truly encouraging, हमको लग रहा है इसको आगे बढ़ाया जा सकता है। This is the process. This is the institutions, CFRMC, Gram Sabha and the government institutions. We all need to go together if we want to restore the forest resources. However, this journey is challenging, requiring time, patience, persistence सब चाहिए, बीच बीच में थोड़ा सा बातचीत भी होता है, कम्युनिटी के साथ भी अनबन होता है, ITDA के साथ भी होता है, ग्राम सभा के साथ भी होता है, बट वो चैलेंज के साथ ही आगे बढ़ना पड़ेगा. Yet successfully like Cartoon Saga inspire us to continue strengthening local communities, empowering them to build economic and ecological resources. So far, this is the whole story about Cartoon Saga. I rest my presentation. Thank you.
So thank you, Niranjan. So you have said many things. At the end, you have said that checking deforestation and doing some community processes to reverse deforestation is not an overnight game. It needs patience, continuous engagement, collaboration, lots of things. And another thing you have highlighted in the Forest Right Act about Section 5, which emphasizes about the authority of the community, their responsibility to protect, manage and restore the resources, and the institutional mechanism of Community Forest Resource Management Committee, when they are empowered, how the forest fire has been controlled, they have taken local efforts to restore the forest and lots of changes in the village. So thank you, Niranjan. So with this, I am inviting our last speaker. So we are over time now. So I request to stay for 10 minutes. We'll listen more and we will wrap up very shortly. So Dr. Fatima, are you able to hear me? Hello.
Can you hear us? Hello.
Yeah. So yeah, we have forgotten to share the PPT with her, no? So now it is your time. So please make your presentation, and she will share about how they are restoring the ancestral fund and how they are reviving both economy and ecology in the locality. So it will be great if you will speak in English. So it is now up to you. Yeah.
Hello?
Yeah, Dr. Baba, you can start your presentation.
Okay, thank you. Actually, you can help me to partage my communication.
You
Voilà, je vais partager mon écran, quoi. Je veux partager mon écran.
You can share your screen and start presenting. You can share your screen and start presenting.
Ok, d'accord. Il n'y a pas un traducteur à côté? Hein?
What, doctor? Maybe you can email
Il
me.
n'y a pas un traducteur.
What happened?
Oui, je vous écoute, mais I can comprendre English very well. Je vous ai dit que je suis francophone, francophone. Donc, je ne parle pas bien anglais. Si vous voulez, je peux faire ma présentation quand même en français. Mais seulement que je voulais partager mon écran. Mais je crois que l'icône qui nous permet de partager l'écran là, on a un problème avec ça. Maintenant, je vais lire, et comme ça, s'il y a un traducteur là-bas, Demi va continuer à traduire si cela vous va. Ok?
Yeah, no. You may present.
D'accord. Je suis déjà d'abord désolée de ne pas être présente parmi vous. C'était vraiment un grand souhait pour moi. Et il ne s'agit pas seulement de partir prendre part à une conférence, mais cela nous permettrait aussi d'élargir nos relations scientifiques entre les différents pays participants. Mais malheureusement, la plateforme ou le lien que vous avez envoyé ne nous a pas vraiment permis de nous inscrire en ligne. Donc, mais cela nous tient. J'ai tenu vraiment à participer à cette conférence.
Doctor, can you present in English, please? We can't understand French.
I can tell you English. Je parle pas anglais.
Doctor, our translation tools aren't equipped enough to translate your words in English.
C'est ça. Vous avez un traducteur là-bas, non? Ma communication porte sur les mares dans la région des Cancans, un héritage économique et de développement communautaire.
Doctor, what we can do, doctor, is you can share your presentation and we would share it with the people who have attended this session. That will be available because we can't have a presentation where we can't understand the language, right? It won't be feasible.
You can understand other language before English.
No, we couldn't understand. We thought there was a miscommunication, and we were like, you could please present.
Bon, c'est ce que je veux commencer. Maintenant, je commence ma présentation maintenant. C'est des problèmes techniques. Il y a un problème technique parce qu'avec Google Meet, c'est un peu difficile pour moi de partager mon écran. C'est ce que je voulais faire. Partager l'écran, au moins continuer à lire au moins le texte pour vous permettre de comprendre. Mais malheureusement, non. Donc, je vais lire le texte.
Google Translate isn't translating your voice really well. It's not translating your French really well. So the translation is basically it's the wrong translation that we are doing. That's why I'm requesting you to we may not be able to have a presentation in French. We would like if you could just share your PPT and we would be happy to share it in the group. If you can present in English, please do. Otherwise, it would be better if you could just share your PPT with the group, and we would be sure to share it with the panelists who are with the attendees who are joining.
Okay, d'accord.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Dr. Fatima.
Thank you, Doctor.
Désolé.
We have your presentation with us. We will share that with the participants. So we are really sorry.
Attendez.
Yeah.
Je vais vous proposer quelque chose. Écoutez, s'il vous plaît. I will send my publication to Omka. Comme ça, il va afficher ça sur l'écran et moi, je vais continuer à faire la lecture. Ça va?
Okay, Doctor.
J'envoie ça à Omka. Je lui envoie ça tout de suite par mail et comme ça, lui va partager ça sur l'écran. Si cela vous convient.
Doctor, we still can't understand you, but we would be happy to share your presentation with the remaining.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes.
Trying to arrange some translator.
Ensuite, je disais que je vais transférer la communication à Omka. Comme on a un problème de choses, de compréhension en langue, comme ça, lui, il va projeter ça sur l'écran et tout le monde pourra. Moi, je vais continuer juste à faire la lecture. J'ai déjà envoyé Omka, tu peux consulter ton mail. You can consult your mail.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. So we have your presentation with us and we will share with participants. So it is unfortunate that the translator has been arranged. So we are sorry for that, and we will share the presentation with us. And we hope to see you next time at ILDC in person. We know you have a visa problem, that's why you couldn't come. So thank you so much.
Thank you, ma'am.
So it is very unfortunate we couldn't understand her, and hopefully we will meet her next time at ILDC and we will communicate her about this activity. So it is over time now. I'll invite the speakers to come here. We can take one or two questions, with that we will wrap up. Yeah. If any questions, one or two questions. So if anyone has any question, we can take maximum 2 questions. So I think no questions. You have.
No, it's okay. So both of I just saw both of yours presentation. I'm sorry, I was a bit late. You mentioned about आपने उड़ान में it's okay for Hindi right? हाँ, उड़ान में आपने बोला था कि बेर से livelihood जो है वो mostly affect होता है. Similarly, ओडिशा में भी production जिस तरीके का जंगल में हो रहा है उसके अनुसार livelihood के लिए मतलब NTF पे reliance है. तो जब हम लाइवलीहुड इसमें बात करें उसको आप थोड़ा एक्सपैंड कर सकते हैं कि किस तरीके से होता है, मतलब थोड़ा मार्केट के उसमें समझना चाह रही हूँ संदर्भ में कि वहाँ पे किस तरीके से एग्जिस्ट करते हैं.
ठीक है, जितना मुझे पता है मैं जिस तरह हम लोग स्टडी कर रहे हैं तो स्पेसिफिकली अगर बेर का देखें तो वहाँ पे bear is basically being collected by Saisi community, and in that also the children go and collect it and then sell it in the market. Rate I am forgetting.
The rate is not much high, but it is important for the marginalized community that lives in that settlement, in that village, because mostly marginalized communities in the village are mostly dependent for NTFP products, because it's a source of livelihood. They harvest it and they sell it locally, especially the children. So they collect it. There is no any limitation on harvesting it, and so they use it for their self-consumption also, and then if there is surplus, they sell it. So the prices are around 20 to 30 per kg.
I want to add to this. You saw that there was that khejri, that sangri is there, the mushroom, which was, you could see it actually a desert. Before I went to that place, I was also not knowing. But it just comes naturally from just during the rain. And that mushroom is very much, that's cost, which I buy, it's around 2,000 rupees per kg you have to purchase. The sangri is also 2,000, 3,000 rupees per kg it can be. So it's for self-consumption, yes, and the surplus is really sold out also. In the nearby, it's not big far off, but yeah, it's nearby. And the fuel good, these things are also the activities which is available from these homes.
मेरा एक एक्सपीरियंस है इसमें, और पहले तो हम लोग एनटीएफपी ना हर जगह पे हर गांव पे एक जैसा नहीं मिलता है. So different kinds of NTFP, even if that is a पंचायत, एक ही पंचायत में भी अलग-अलग गांव में अलग-अलग प्रोड्यूस मिल जाता है. कहीं पे महुआ बहुत ज़्यादा मिलता है तो कहीं का साल का सीड बहुत ज़्यादा मिलता है, किसी का एमएसपी है, किसी का एमएसपी नहीं है. These are the things. और किसी का मार्केट आपके पास है, किसी का मार्केट आपके पास नहीं है. लोकलिटी होनी होती है. ये सारा चीजें देखना पड़ेगा. एंड देयर आर आल्सो सम एनटीएफपी जहाँ पे जिसका न्यूट्रिशन वैल्यू बहुत है लेकिन कम्युनिटी उसको पैसे के चक्कर में कंज्यूम करने नहीं करके बेच देते हैं. दिस इज ऑल्सो अनदर काइंड ऑफ थिंग्स कि पहले तो न्यूट्रिशन देखना चाहिए. गांव में हमारे पास हेल्थ का बेनिफिट्स नहीं, तो ऑल दिस थिंग्स नीड टू बी फाइंड आउट. देन कुछ जगह पे सात सीड का जो है उसका गार्नेज निकाल के बेचेंगे तो टीडीसीसी ले जाएगा. दैट्स व्हाई टीडीसीसी नीड टू बी इन मार्केट प्लेस में उसको बात करना पड़ेगा, क्योंकि वही सबसे ज्यादा रेट देता है 20 रुपीस. अदरवाइज लोकल मार्केट ट्रेडर 12 से 13 रुपए लेते हैं. ओडिशा का रेट है, बट आई डोंट नो व्हाट इज द रेट आउटसाइड द स्टेट. बट वो एक अलग तरीके का चैनल है. महुआ को लोग ना बाटर सिस्टम में भी इस्तेमाल करते हैं. जब जरूरत होगा तब बेचेगा, लोकल वेंडर के पास बेचेगा, उससे कुछ चावल दाल ले आएगा, फिर जरूरत होगा फिर बेचेगा, या घर में शादी है तब बेचेगा. दिस इज द अनदर सिस्टम कि वो कैसे रखे. वो ट्रेडिशनल मेथड को भी उसको जो है ना जब उसको डिप्राइव है उस टाइम पे वो यूज करता है, तो वो एक अलग तरीके का मेथड है. तो इस तरीके से थोड़ा सा सोचना पड़ेगा. वी कैन सभी नेचुरल नॉन टिम्बर फॉरेस्ट प्रोड्यूस करने एक साथ नहीं कर सकते. गेंदू का पत्ता एक बहुत स्ट्रीमलाइन है उड़ीसा में, तो उसमें एक अच्छा रेवेन्यू जनरेट होता है. और वो फिर वो इसमें नहीं आता है, वो तो पूरा रेगुलेटेड है मार्केट में, तो वहीं से वो लोग चला जाता है। लीफलेट्स एक अलग तरीके का है जिसमें पेरिसेबल मटेरियल है, एक लिमिटेड टाइम पीरियड के अंदर उसको करना पड़ेगा। और कम्युनिटी का इंस्टीट्यूशन यहाँ पे बहुत अच्छा काम कर सकता है लीफलेट के केसेस में, कि वहाँ पे बनाएंगे, क्वालिटी का बनाएंगे, मार्केट से लिंकेज करेंगे और रेगुलर सेट करेंगे। तो हर एक एनटीएफटी के लिए हमको अलग अलग देखना पड़ेगा, बट दैट्स नीड ए कॉम्प्रिहेंसिव स्टडी ऑल्सो।
So I think there is no more questions. So thank you for your patience. If I sum up the key takeaways of this session in 3 points, community governance can happen in absence of tenure also. Second is for community stewardship, care, knowledge and agency equally important. When 3 are combined, they need to lead to successful community stewardship. Third is FRA is right plus. So it is more about responsibility and authority of local community to govern their resources. And when it is properly planned and community is empowered, there are changes. Okay, thank you everyone for your presence and being with us till so late. Okay, thank you so much.